Flexbox's justify content property is simple and super robust. Even though it only takes a few minutes to learn how to use justify content, it will change the way you build pages forever. By the time this video is over, you'll be able to make about a dozen new things with your page layouts. Justify content lets you manage the spacing around, between, and outside your flex items along the main axis of your container. That is the x-axis in a row and the y-axis in a column. Let's start here. I have a flex container that is the height and width of the viewport that contains 5 child elements, each with the block size med class. I've applied a height and width of 100 pixels and alternated background colors so that we can distinguish them. As a quick aside, I'm applying blue backgrounds to odd flex items and black backgrounds to even flex items. How do I do this? Well, I'm using something called a pseudo class called nth of type, which I append to my CSS selector in a new CSS rule. Pseudo classes complement regular classes and extend the uses for CSS outside of classes and IDs. Here, the nth of type pseudo class allows me to change the style of a single class element based on when and how it appears. Don't worry if this is confusing, we'll learn more about it later. Let's add justify content space around to the flex container. Nice, right? Let's look at what we just did. We added justify content and applied space around to it. The value is pretty self-explanatory. It applies equal spacing around every flex item. It even works if we change the flex direction. Let's see this by changing it to column. So that's space around, but what about space between? It works similarly, but instead of applying equal spacing, it pushes elements as far away from one another as possible, and it removes the spacing outside of the first and last child elements. It's not totally clear how useful this is when working with 5 child elements, but it's immediately clear when we use 2. If you add some padding and other CSS to the flex container and change flex items into, say, a logo and a link to your About page, you almost have a nav bar ready to go. There are 3 other justify content values that will make your life easier: flex start, flex end, and center. These aren't as exciting as the others, but they do for you in one declaration what used to take several lines of CSS. The first uses flex start, which is the default, so we actually didn't have to write any justify content declaration here. The second uses flex end, which aligns the flex items at one end of the container. This also works for columns, in which case the flex items would align at the bottom. And the third is center. In the past, if you wanted to center something horizontally, you could use margin left and right equal to auto, but here it just takes one easy declaration on the flex container. One last thing before we go. Remember how I said our page has 3 flex columns? If you look closely, you'll see that I actually did some inception level nesting here. We have the 3 containers we just covered to show flex start, flex end, and center all nested inside of a 4th container class, which is a flex container with the flex direction column applied to it, and of course, a justify content property equal to space around. Smooth, right? That's it. We'll talk to you next time.